My name's Aidan Cotter. I'm Her Majesty's Coroner for Birmingham Solihull. I've been a coroner for over 20 years. I've held over 9,000 inquests. So I'm a lawyer, not a doctor. I've got no medical training at all, and I've got no experience in running hospitals. So essentially my job is to hold an inquest, which simply means an inquiry. But when I'm holding an inquiry, I have to look and see whether there are things that can be improved. So part of the purpose of the inquest is to try and learn lessons. My job isn't to say what the answers are, because I'm not qualified to do that. My job is to say what problems, what failures have been shown by the evidence that I've heard. I know how the doctors feel, because as coroner, my judgments are called into question by the High Court. So I'm called before the High Court, which is much more scary than the Coroner's Court, and my conduct is held up to question, and I have to explain myself exactly as doctors have to do. So I do know exactly how people feel. I also know that if the media choose to run a point, that can crucify a medic, and it can crucify his family, because that's what happens to me every day of the week. I make a mistake and it's front page news.
I suppose, well, if you were advising a doctor coming to an inquest, what sort of things would you say to them that you would expect, and indeed the family would expect, they should act and behave at an inquest?
Everything is summed up in just one word: professionalism. It's important that doctors understand that they are the most important person at the inquest. It's not me as coroner. It's not me as coroner that the families are looking to. It's the doctor, because the doctor can explain to them what was wrong with their loved one, what they did for him, and why he died. And that's what they want to know. And everything flows from that. So first, doctors should be prepared. Now, I still get some doctors who come to inquests and they're just simply not prepared. And to my mind, there's just no excuse for that. So they have to read the notes. And it's obvious, it's the first time they've looked at them. Very often they can't even read what's there. And can you imagine what it's like for a family member whose father has died after surgery, and you have the surgeon and you have the physicians, and they can't say what happened without opening the notes, spending 2 or 3 minutes finding the right page, and then they can't even read what's written down. And what sort of impression does that give? Now, I'm talking about a small minority, right? Most doctors would cringe with embarrassment at thinking they wouldn't be prepared. I get some doctors and they don't even get the name of the deceased right. Now, you and I know it doesn't make any difference to the way you treat someone, whether he's called Smith or Jones. But when you call his widow Mrs. Jones and her name is Mrs. Smith, it hardly breeds confidence in people. Family aren't looking to make money, aren't looking to cause trouble. They simply want to know, why did Dad die? And they need someone who can say to them, I'm very sorry that your dad died. When John came in, this is what was wrong with him. This is what we did for him. And sadly, he died despite that. And usually it takes 5 minutes to say that. And for the family, it's probably the first time they've understood what happened. Now, I'm sure doctors, nurses, and other people have talked to them all the way through. But when your dad is dying, you're not taking all this technical stuff in. All you know is your dad's dying. And so they need to get an overview. And the only person who can really give it is the doctor.
Do you think that has changed at all over the years at all? Or?
It's improving. The younger doctors are actually better than the older ones. But there is a group of very experienced doctors who, to my mind, are behaving 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And even then I don't believe the best doctors behaved in that way. So the younger doctors are often better than the more experienced doctors.
That's interesting, the comment. I mean, have you got any thoughts on why that might be at all? Or?
I think people are being trained much more to realise that doctors provide a service. And I think doctors take the blame concept too far. And if they're professional, they shouldn't. You ought to be thinking about the deceased and the deceased family and not yourself.
I mean, it's about putting the patient, or in this case the patient's family, first.
Yes, yes. And also realising that nobody actually thinks doctors are gods. Right? Nobody actually thinks doctors know everything. Nobody thinks that you can cure everybody. All we think is that you ought to be professional people who care and perform a really important job. I mean, the average doctor's job is what, 7,000 times more important than mine? So I get something wrong and I upset a few people. You get something wrong, you actually end up with a dead body. So what's my job compared to yours? So there are certain surgeons whose manner with families is absolutely brilliant. They take over the whole thing and they act very much as a bereavement officer. They go, to my mind, far beyond anything that one might expect of them. And there are others who...
Can I just pick you up on that? I mean, when you say that, I mean, what was it that struck you about those doctors that was just so brilliant?
Some of them, they come into court, and as they come into court, they deliberately catch the eye of the family, and they immediately form a bond with them. And I get the immediate impression that they're saying to the family, this is you and me appearing before the coroner. We were there when Tony died. Okay? Now they don't say anything, but you can see the empathy passing between them. And then when they talk to them, they make a point of referring to the deceased person as an individual and recounting some small thing about them, which obviously rings a bell with the family. And sometimes it's not even particularly flattering. Sometimes they'll say, of course, Tony was capable of being quite forceful, right? And we all know he's obviously been damn rude to the surgeon, but he gets the rapport with the family and they all understand what they're talking about. But you get other doctors and they stand in the witness box with their hands in their pockets talking to the family. I get a very senior surgeon from one of our local hospitals and he's sitting at the back and he's openly yawning. Now, okay, he's behind the family, but you don't know when people are going to turn around, you don't know when people are actually going to see that or hear it. And it may be that he'd been carrying out very high-powered surgery all night long, but it simply isn't professional. When the doctors come and they explain to the family what was wrong with someone, what they tried to do for him and why he died, and they give closure to the family, you can see all the tension drain out of people. You can see all their grief sort itself out. And time after time after time, they get up at the end of the inquest and they go straight to the doctor and they shake his hand and they say thanks. And that's how it should be. That's what every inquest ought to be like. And that's what doctors can achieve, not me. It's what doctors can achieve.